The Texas sun blazed merciless overhead as Martha Reynolds wiped sweat from her brow, surveying her meager cornfield. The drought had claimed most of her crops this summer of 1848, leaving the stalks withered and brown. 3 years since her husband Jacob had died from rattlesnake bite, 3 years of fighting this unforgiving land alone. The cabin stood defiant against the elements, but barely, its cedar walls weathered by sandstorms, roof patched with whatever scraps she could. Scavenge. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Martha paused, shading her eyes to scan the horizon where the Llano Estacado stretched endlessly. Empty prairie met empty sky, broken only by occasional mesquite and prickly pear. Even the buzzards had abandoned this barren stretch of West Texas. She reached for the water bucket hanging by the well, noting with growing concern how the rope descended deeper each day to reach moisture. As she turned back toward the house, movement caught her peripheral vision, something dark against the golden grass. Martha froze, pulse quickening as she strained to identify the disturbance. At first she thought it might be a coyote, perhaps wounded and seeking shade. But as she crept closer, clutching her bucket like a weapon, dread crystallized in her stomach. A child, motionless in the tall grass. Martha's heart hammered as she approached. Not just any child. The copper skin, jet-black hair twisted in braids. The beaded moccasins left no doubt. Comanche. The very word sent shivers through settlements from the Red River to the Rio Grande. These plains belonged to them as much as the buffalo, and they defended both with legendary ferocity. The boy couldn't have been more than 12 summers. He lay curled on his side, his buckskin shirt dark with blood. A crude bandage fashioned from grass and strips of hide covered his left shoulder. His breathing came shallow and rapid, lips parted with thirst. This close, Martha could see the rawhide pouch hanging from his neck, marked with symbols she couldn't interpret. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to bar her door, to pretend she'd seen nothing. Let nature take its course. The nearest settlement, Fort Lancaster, lay 30 miles east. The last raid had been just 2 months past. The Johnson homestead burned to the ground, livestock scattered, 2 children taken. The Comanche showed no mercy to white settlers. Why should she risk everything for one of their own? Yet as she stood there, memories of her own childhood rose unbidden. Her brother Thomas, falling from the barn roof at age 10. The terror of watching him struggle to breathe while their father rode for the doctor. The overwhelming relief when the healer finally arrived, saving his life. This boy was someone's brother, someone's son. Martha cursed her weakness as she knelt beside him. His skin burned with fever. The wound beneath the makeshift bandage had festered, attracting flies in the oppressive heat. If she left him here, he would surely die by nightfall. But helping him meant inviting danger into her home, possibly inviting death itself. The boy's eyes fluttered open, dark as obsidian, rimmed with pain. They focused on her face with surprising clarity. For a heartbeat, time suspended. In that gaze, Martha saw not the savage warrior the townspeople feared, but simply a child far from home, alone and hurting. "God give me strength," she whispered, then made her decision. Working quickly before courage could abandon her, Martha retrieved an old blanket from her cabin. The boy remained conscious but weak, offering no resistance as she wrapped him carefully. His weight proved more than she anticipated, lean muscle despite his youth. Every step toward her cabin increased her trepidation. Inside, she laid him on Jacob's old cot near the fireplace. Proper light revealed the extent of his injury. Someone had shot him, the bullet passing clean through his shoulder. Though the wound had been tended, infection threatened. Martha gathered her limited medical supplies, whiskey for cleaning, needle, and thread. clean rags torn from an old petticoat. As she worked to redress his wound, the boy watched her with careful attention. Once, when she needed to roll him to access his back, he shifted position himself, demonstrating impressive stoicism for someone so young. His eyes tracked every movement, every item she touched, memorizing, calculating. Martha spoke to him as she cleaned the wound, partly to calm her own nerves. "I had 2 sons once, little ones. Cholera took them during the first winter out here." She threaded her needle, hands only slightly trembling. "You're stronger than they were, but not strong enough to heal on your own." The boy remained silent, but something in his gaze shifted. Perhaps he understood more English than she assumed. Perhaps he simply recognized kindness, however cautiously offered. Once his wounds were properly dressed, Martha faced her next dilemma. How long before someone came looking for him? His sudden appearance suggested pursuit or flight from danger. Either way, others would follow his trail. The signs would lead directly to her door. She glanced out her single window. The sun had begun its descent toward evening. Decision time approached rapidly. Could she hide evidence of his presence? Should she even try? Common wisdom dictated alerting the authorities, letting the army handle relations with the Comanche. But common wisdom also said a wounded child deserved basic humanity, even one born to a so-called savage race. Martha bolted her door, a futile gesture against determined Comanche warriors, but somehow comforting. She prepared thin broth from her dwindling supply of dried beef, reasoning that soup would be gentle on his fevered system. The boy accepted it warily, but with obvious hunger, propping himself on one elbow, despite the pain movement caused. As she sat watching him eat, Martha studied his features more closely. High cheekbones, strong jaw that would be commanding in adulthood, but still soft with youth. His hands, though calloused, moved with practiced grace, even weakened by injury. This was no ordinary child. His bearing suggested importance, perhaps. The son of a chief or war leader. "What's your name?" she asked softly. His dark eyes met hers, but he offered no response, whether from distrust, inability to understand, or simple caution. She couldn't tell. "I'm Martha," she continued, touching her chest. "Martha Reynolds." Still silence. But when she stood to retrieve more water, he spoke for the first time. The word emerged rough, accented. "Tawakana." Martha turned back, uncertain if he'd given his name or something else entirely. The word held the cadence of his language, foreign yet somehow musical. She nodded, accepting it as identity enough. Darkness fell swiftly on the Texas plains. Martha lit her single oil lamp sparingly, casting dancing shadows across the cabin walls. The boy had fallen into fitful sleep, occasionally murmuring words she couldn't comprehend. Fever dreams, most likely. She positioned herself in Jacob's old rocking chair, close enough to monitor her unexpected patient, but far enough to access the loaded rifle mounted above the door. Sleep seemed impossible. Every crack of cooling wood, every rustle of night creatures sent her pulse racing. The Comanche were famous for their night raids, for slipping silently through darkness like spirits. Yet hours passed without incident. The boy's breathing gradually evened out, suggesting his young body was beginning to fight the infection. Martha found herself nodding off despite her anxiety, exhaustion from a long day finally claiming her. She startled awake to grey pre-dawn, light filtering through gaps in the shutters. The boy had shifted positions slightly, but remained unconscious. Martha moved quietly to build up the fire, noting how the night's chill had penetrated the cabin walls. As she worked, she considered her options anew: keep him hidden until he could travel, alert the authorities at Fort Lancaster, try to signal his people somehow. Each choice carried enormous risk. The fragile peace between settlers and Comanche hung by threads. One wrong move could shatter months of careful negotiations by Indian agents. The sound of approaching hoofbeats shattered her morning contemplation. 3 riders emerged from the dawn mist, their silhouettes unmistakable even at distance. Rangers, most likely, or perhaps militia from the settlement. Martha's breath caught in her throat. Her first impulse was to hide the boy somehow. The root cellar, perhaps, or beneath her bed. But would that make matters worse if they discovered her deception? The consequences for hiding aid to enemy Indians could include hanging. Movement drew her attention. The boy had awakened, instantly alert despite his injury. He'd heard the horses too, and struggled to sit up, wincing as the motion pulled at his wounded shoulder. His eyes locked with hers, a question in their depths. Help or betray? Martha rushed to the window. The riders had slowed their approach, clearly intending to stop. One carried a Texas flag, another bore the distinctive star badge of a ranger. The third man she recognized, Samuel Crawford, a neighboring rancher known for his hatred of all indigenous peoples. "Stay quiet," she whispered urgently to the boy. "Whatever happens, stay quiet." The boy nodded understanding, sinking back onto the cot. Martha smoothed her dress, checked her reflection in the tarnished mirror by the door. She needed to appear normal, unconcerned. Just Martha Reynolds, widow, eking out an existence on the edge of nowhere. The knock came firm and authoritative. Martha deliberately counted to 3 before answering, wanting to appear surprised by early visitors rather than expecting trouble. "Mrs. Reynolds," the ranger removed his hat. "Captain William Braddock, if she remembered correctly. Hope you're faring well this morning." "Well, as can be expected, Captain," Martha replied, keeping her voice steady. "What brings you out this way at such an hour?" "We're tracking a young Comanche brave," Braddock explained bluntly. "Got separated from a war party yesterday during a skirmish near Devil's River. Blood trail leads this direction." Martha's pulse thundered, but she maintained eye contact. "Haven't seen hide nor hair of any Indians since that raid on the Johnson place." "Mind if we take a look around?" Crawford interrupted, his gaze already scanning past her into the cabin. "Trail's pretty fresh. Boy couldn't have gone far with the wound we gave him." The phrasing struck Martha. The wound we gave him. These men had shot a child, were hunting him like a game. Something hardened in her resolve. "I suppose you could look," she conceded, opening the door wider. "Though I've got precious little to hide in a cabin this size." The 3 men entered, their boots tracking mud across her carefully swept floor. Braddock moved with professional efficiency, checking corners, peering beneath furniture. The third ranger examined her small pantry, while Crawford lingered near the cot, where the boy lay hidden beneath layers of quilts and blankets she'd hastily arranged. "Smells like sickness in here," Crawford observed, moving closer. "Had a touch of fever myself yesterday," Martha lied smoothly. "Though I'm much improved now." Crawford reached toward the blankets, every muscle in Martha's body tensed for the inevitable discovery. Yet at that moment, as if Providence intervened, the man's boot caught on a loose floorboard. He stumbled, cursing as he grabbed the edge of the cot for balance. "Careful there, Sam," Braddock cautioned. "Mrs. Reynolds has enough troubles without us breaking her furniture." The near miss seemed to satisfy their cursory search. Finding no obvious signs of the boy, the rangers prepared to leave. "We'll be making rounds through the area," Braddock informed her. "If you spot anything unusual, fire 3 shots in the air. We'll come running." Martha nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. As they remounted, Crawford hesitated, looking back. "You know, ma'am, these Comanche take white women captive regular. They're especially partial to widows, fewer men around to mount rescue." "I appreciate your concern," Martha replied tersely. Once they'd ridden out of sight, Martha collapsed against the door, her legs finally betraying her with trembling. That had been far too close. She turned to find the boy watching her, with something new in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. "Tawakana," she said quietly, using his name. "You need to get stronger quickly." They won't stop looking. The morning sun climbed higher, promising another scorching day. Martha went about her chores mechanically, mind racing with implications. Every sound now held a potential threat. Every dust cloud on the horizon could herald danger. By midday, the boy showed marked improvement. The fever had broken overnight, and he managed to sit without assistance. He accepted cornbread and more broth, eating with increasing appetite. As Martha worked at her spinning wheel, threading cotton grown in her small patch behind the cabin, she studied him covertly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "You understand more English than you let on," she stated suddenly. The boy paused in his eating, considering whether to maintain his silence. Finally, he nodded once. "Why are you alone?" she pressed. "Where's your family?" His eyes grew distant. When he spoke, the words came halting but clear. "Hunting. 3 days. Come back and find me. 3 days." The timeline struck Martha like cold water. If his people would return for him in 3 days, she faced an impossible deadline. He needed more time to heal, but his presence endangered everything she had left. "Will they know where to find you?" she asked, another nod. Then, surprising her, "Father, no." His father would come looking. Martha swallowed hard, imagining painted warriors surrounding her cabin, demanding the boy's return. Would they see her aid as help or hindrance? Would they spare her life out of gratitude or take it to silence a witness? The afternoon wore on with agonizing slowness. Martha tried to focus on preparations. Extra water from the well, check ammunition for her rifle, secure loose items that might become projectiles if attacked. The boy watched these actions, perhaps understanding the source of her anxiety. As evening approached, he attempted to rise from the cot. Martha moved to assist him, surprised by the independence in his gesture. He waved her off, testing his strength by gripping the edge of the table. His legs held, though she could see the effort it cost him. "You shouldn't push yourself," she cautioned. "Must be ready," he replied simply. Ready for what? His family's arrival? Another confrontation with rangers? Escape? Martha didn't ask, perhaps afraid of the answer. Night fell once more, bringing new anxieties. This time Martha prepared more thoroughly. She moved the cot away from the window, repositioned furniture to create defensive positions. The boy observed these arrangements with keen interest. "War before?" he asked unexpectedly. Martha paused in her work. "Only the war of survival," she answered. "Out here, that's war enough." He nodded understanding, perhaps recognizing a common ground between their peoples. Both fought to maintain their place in this harsh land. Both faced threats from elements and enemies alike. As she doused the lamp for the night, a new sound emerged from beyond the cabin walls. Distant thunder. No, the rhythm was wrong. Drums, faint but unmistakable, echoing across the plains. The boy stirred at the sound, something changing in his posture. He tilted his head, listening intently. "Your people," Martha whispered, though they were alone. "Warning," he confirmed. "They come." 3 words that chilled Martha to her core. Warriors approached, drawn by the drum's message. Her cabin would soon be at the center of a very different kind of storm. Dawn crept across the Texas sky, painting its shades of blood and copper. Martha had spent the sleepless night preparing what little she could, barricading windows, checking ammunition, and arranging supplies for quick escape. The drums had fallen silent an hour before sunrise, their absence more ominous than their rhythmic warning. Tawakana had grown stronger overnight, fueled by youth's remarkable resilience. He now moved about the cabin with measured steps, testing the limits of his healing shoulder. Martha watched him examine her possessions with curiosity. The Franklin stove, her mother's china plates wrapped in newspaper, the daguerreotype of Jacob on the mantel. You live alone for a long time. His English had improved noticeably since yesterday. 3 years, Martha replied, slicing the last of her preserved venison for breakfast. Since the fever took my husband, the boy nodded solemnly. Sickness take many, both peoples. His acknowledgement of shared loss surprised her. For so long, the settlers had viewed the Comanche as a monolithic threat, never considering their humanity, beyond raiding parties and warfare. Now, watching him carefully avoid using his injured arm while helping her stoke the fire, Martha glimpsed something the townfolk refused to see. They were just another tribe trying to survive on the same harsh land. "Tawakana," she ventured. "What happens when your father arrives?" The boy straightened, his young face serious beyond his years. "Father is Quana, war chief of Quahadi band." He paused, searching for words. "He will see you help, will not harm." Martha's heart sank. Not just any chief's son, Quana's son. The name carried weight even in isolated Texas. Stories spoke of this particular war chief as both a brilliant strategist and fierce protector of his people. He struck terror in the hearts of cavalry commanders from Fort Worth to San Antonio. "The Shia. Rangers are still searching," she told him. "They nearly found you yesterday. If they return—" "I know." He moved to the window, peering through a crack in the shutters. "They hunt Comanche like animals. We fight to live." The morning sun climbed higher, each moment stretching Martha's nerves tighter. She gathered her laundry basin and headed to the creek behind the cabin, partly for normalcy, partly to scout for approaching riders. Tawakana insisted on joining her, his strength returning with remarkable speed. "Stay back from the waterline," she instructed. "Your tracks could give us—" "Away!" He nodded, settling against a cottonwood tree while she scrubbed clothes against a flat rock. The familiar routine soothed her anxiety slightly. As she worked, Tawakana began teaching her words in his language. Koasa for water, Semako for horse, Puha for medicine power. "Your Puha is strong," he observed, touching his bandaged shoulder, "like our healers." Martha paused in her scrubbing. "I just did what anyone would do for a hurt child." "No." His voice held certainty. "Most whites leave Comanche to die. Their moment of cultural exchange shattered when Tawakana suddenly stiffened. He raised one hand in warning, then melted silently into the brush. Martha's pulse quickened as she recognized what had alarmed him. Distant hoofbeats approaching from the east. Not rangers this time. 3 civilian riders, their horses moving at a leisurely pace. As they drew closer, Martha recognized them. Herbert Mitchell and his 2 eldest sons, neighbors from 5 miles down creek. The Mitchells had always maintained armed neutrality toward Martha, neither hostile nor particularly helpful. "Morning, Mrs. Reynolds," Herbert called, removing his wide-brimmed hat. "Didn't expect to find you washing so early." "Mr. Mitchell." Martha continued scrubbing, though her hands trembled. "Boys," Mitchell dismounted, his sons remaining atop their mounts. "Been hearing rumors from Fort Lancaster. Rangers say there's a wounded Comanche brave hiding somewhere in our valley." "So I heard yesterday," Martha replied carefully. "We're riding the property lines, keeping watch." Mitchell's eyes scanned the area. "Where there's one Comanche, there's usually more." His eldest son, Thomas, interrupted. "Saw signal smoke yesterday, 2 ridges over. Could be them planning something big." Martha's stomach churned. Signal smoke meant communication between bands. If multiple groups were coordinating— "Y'all staying alert out here alone?" the younger Mitchell boy asked. "Been years since we had real trouble, but when it comes fast." "I've managed this long," Martha answered, pride stiffening her spine. "Not about to run scared now." Herbert nodded approvingly. "That's the spirit. Still, you hear shooting or see any sign, you light that signal pile we helped your husband build. We'll come running." After they departed, Martha hurried back to the cabin. Tawakana emerged from concealment as she approached. "Signal smoke," she said urgently. "Your people are communicating. What are they planning? The boy's brow furrowed as he struggled to translate concepts. Father, gathering bands. Not war. Protection. Protection from what? From more lies. His young face hardened. Soldiers want a treaty. We give land, they promise peace. Then they want more. Always more. Martha understood. The pattern repeated across the frontier. Treaties signed, broken, and rewritten in blood. Each cycle left, both sides more distrustful, more desperate. Inside, she discovered their food supplies had dwindled alarmingly. 3 days of feeding an extra mouth, combined with stress-induced lack of appetite, had reduced her stores to dangerous levels. Hunting alone held risks, but necessary ones. I need to check my snares, she told Tawakana. Maybe find a game. You rest that shoulder, I come. He grabbed his knife from where she'd placed it with his belongings. Track is life for Comanche. Against better judgment, Martha agreed. His tracking skills proved immediately valuable. Within minutes of entering the sparse woods, he spotted rabbit tracks she'd missed, pointed out broken twigs indicating a deer trail, and identified which plants held moisture during dry spells. You see like a wolf, he observed, examining her. Footprints. Light steps, no brake branch. Pride warmed Martha despite the circumstances. Had to learn. Hunting alone means hunting smart. They moved deeper into the mesquite thickets. Tawakana taught her Comanche hunting methods, reading wind direction, identifying animal trails by time of day, distinguishing between tracks of does and bucks. In return, Martha shared her knowledge of local game patterns, water sources that didn't dry in drought, and which meadows held the sweetest grass for deer. But their hunting expedition revealed something more troubling. Fresh tracks, multiple horses moving in formation. The prints were unshod, indicating Indian ponies rather than cavalry mounts. Your father's warriors, Martha whispered. Tawakana studied the ground intently. His face grew grave. Not father. Different band? Maybe Yamparika? Are they friendly to your people? Sometimes, sometimes not. They trade, they raid together. He looked up at her. They do not like whites. At all. The sound of Martha's own heartbeat seemed to fill the forest. If hostile warriors were scouting the area, both she and Tawakana were in impossible danger. The boy might be claimed by his father's enemies, used as leverage in tribal politics. She could be killed simply for being white in the wrong place. We need to go back, she decided. Now! Their return journey revealed more signs of activity. A small campfire, recently extinguished, broken branches at horse height. Most concerning, fresh tracks leading toward her cabin from another direction. Someone was watching my house, Martha realized with growing horror. Tawakana nodded grimly. And they know already. About me, about you. They reached the cabin as afternoon shadows lengthened. Martha immediately noticed changes. Disturbed soil near her well, broken window shutters hanging at odd angles. Someone had inspected her property thoroughly during their absence. Inside, subtle signs of intrusion persisted. A chair moved slightly. Dust disturbed on her dresser, her spare flour sack emptier than she'd left it. Most tellingly, one of her late husband's shirts had vanished from the drying line. They're learning about us, she said numbly. Figuring out how many people live here, what supplies we have. Tawakana checked his belongings, confirming nothing had been taken, but his face remained troubled. Yamparika scouts are the best. They tell everything to the war leader. What do we do? For the first time since she'd found him, uncertainty flickered in the boy's eyes. Father, come tomorrow. Must last until, then, tomorrow. The word hung between them like a prayer and a threat. Evening approached, bringing new challenges. The cabin door creaked when opened. Had someone tampered with the hinges? Her Winchester rifle, carefully cleaned and loaded, now bore smudges that hadn't been there that morning. Most disturbing, several cartridges had disappeared from her ammunition box. "They're counting our weapons," Martha said aloud. Preparing for something. As darkness fell, distant war cries echoed across the plains. Unlike the ceremonial drums of the previous night, these sounds held aggression, testing, probing for weakness. Tawakana translated what he could catch between the ululations. "They challenge," he explained. "See if white woman warrior fights. See if Kwahadi boy defects." "Defects?" He struggled with the concept. "They want me to join fight, leave you to die." Martha felt cold despite the cabin's warmth. "Will you?" The boy met her gaze directly. "You save life. Life debt is sacred. More sacred than war." His words should have comforted her. Instead, they highlighted the impossible position they both occupied. Tribal law demanded he protect his savior, but that same law permitted no alliance with whites who had taken so much land and life. The night stretched on, punctuated by distant shouts, occasional gunshots, and once, terrifyingly close, the sound of horses circling the cabin. Martha and Tawakana took turns keeping watch, though neither truly slept during their rest periods. Near midnight, Tawakana suddenly gripped her arm. "Listen." At first, Martha heard nothing unusual. Then she caught it. A rhythmic thumping, not drums. Closer, from beneath the cabin. "Someone's under the house," she whispered, grabbing her rifle. The sound moved from left to right, then stopped directly below the floorboards. Tawakana pressed his ear to the floor, listening intently. After a moment, he tapped 3 times. An answering pattern came back, 4 taps, a pause, then 2. The boy's face showed relief, mixed with concern. "Comanche scout, my father's man." "How do you know?" "Signal pattern, family code." He looked at her. "He wants us to come out." "Could be a trap." "No. Code only the family knows." Martha wrestled with the decision. Trusting unknown Indians went against every frontier warning she'd absorbed, yet she'd already crossed that line by saving Tawakana. Besides, what choice did they have? "Tell him we're coming out." Tawakana tapped the agreed sequence. The sounds from below retreated. At the cabin door, Martha hesitated. If this is wrong, if wrong, already dead. Scout could kill through the floor. His gruesome pragmatism decided her. She unbarred the door. Outside, the night air carried the scent of rain. A single figure emerged from the darkness. A lean warrior with graying hair and piercing eyes that seemed to glow in the moonlight. He wore traditional Comanche garb, but carried modern weapons, a Navy Colt revolver and a cavalry officer's saber. The warrior spoke rapidly in Comanche. Tawakana translated, "This is Little River. Father sent him." Ahead, warriors gather one ridge over. They arrive at dawn. Little River continued speaking, his eyes studying Martha while addressing his words to the boy. "What's he saying?" Martha prompted. "He says—" Tawakana hesitated. "He says whites will come tomorrow. Many whites. Looking for a father. For war." Who told him this? More Comanche words flowed. Little River gestured expansively, pointing north, south, east. "Network of scouts," Tawakana explained. "Like spider web, they see everything. Army unit leaves Fort Richardson. Militia forms up at Devil's Creek. Rangers spreading word of the Comanche war party-threatening settlers." Martha's mind reeled. "They're painting your father as an aggressor." Little River spoke again, more urgently this time. "He says we have a choice," Tawakana translated. "Hide, run, or stand." "Stand and fight how many?" The warrior held up both hands, then repeated the gesture. 20 men, maybe more. Against 1 woman, 1 wounded boy, and a handful of warriors who might reach them by dawn. Little River added something that made Tawakana's face go pale. "What?" Martha demanded. "He says, they bring a cannon this time, small one, for breaking walls." The reality crashed over Martha like a cold wave. This wasn't just a search party anymore. Someone had escalated this into a military action, complete, with artillery support. The cabin that had been her refuge for 3 years would become her tomb if she remained. "We have to run," she decided, "get as far away as possible before Little River interrupted with sharp words." Tawakana shook his head. "He says no run. Running shows guilt. Makes it true what whites say, that you help enemy warrior, that you scheme with Comanche against Texas. I don't care what they say. He says you should care. Your settlement people will believe, will hunt you forever." The scout painted a vivid picture through Tawakana's translation. Martha branded as traitor, hunted across territories, her farm confiscated, her reputation destroyed. Even if she escaped, where would she go? What life awaited a woman marked as Comanche sympathizer? Then what do we do? Martha felt trapped between impossible choices. Little River switched to heavily accented English. "We make a story. Better. Story. What kind of story? Story where white woman," he struggled for words, "where save many life, not just boy. Save many." Martha didn't understand, but before she could ask for clarification, new sounds penetrated the night. Distant shots. Closer. A rider approaching fast. Little River tensed, hand dropping to his revolver. Tawakana grabbed his knife despite his injured shoulder. Martha raised her rifle as hoofbeats thundered toward them through darkness. The rider emerged from the gloom, Herbert Mitchell, hatless, his horse lathered with sweat and terror. "Mrs. Reynolds!" he cried, barely staying in the saddle. "They're coming! The Rangers, the militia, everyone! They say you're harboring Comanches. They say the war chief Quanah himself is riding here." Martha lowered her rifle slightly. "Mr. Mitchell, what happened?" He struggled to catch his breath. "Found my boys, found them." His voice broke. "Arrows in their backs. My property burned. Mary taken." The world tilted on its axis. Mary Mitchell, Herbert's teenage daughter, captured by raiders. Martha felt sick. "When?" "Tonight. While I was riding on the property. By God, they were watching us." Little River and Tawakana exchanged rapid words in Comanche. The scout's face grew grave. "What are they saying?" Mitchell demanded, suddenly noticing the Comanche. "Scout, that wasn't my father's people," Tawakana said quickly. "Different band, enemies maybe." Mitchell's grief and rage focused on the scout. His hand moved toward his gun. "Another damn redskin." "No," Martha stepped between them. "He came to warn us. They all came to help." "Help? They killed my boys, took my Mary." "Not the same people," Martha insisted. But she could see reason had fled Mitchell's eyes, replaced by raw vengeance. The farmer raised his pistol. Martha pushed Tawakana aside, placing herself in the line of fire. Little River had drawn his own weapon, creating a deadly standoff in her yard. "Herbert, please think. We need to find Mary, save her. Fighting each other won't help." Tears streamed down Mitchell's weathered face. "Don't know what to think anymore, Martha. Don't know who to trust." In that moment of suspended violence, Martha glimpsed the true tragedy of the frontier. Good people on both sides, caught in cycles of retaliation that consumed everything decent, everything human. Someone had murdered Mitchell's sons and stolen his daughter, but it might not have been the warriors who now offered protection, who tried to prevent wider war. The standoff stretched into interminable seconds. Then Little River did something unexpected. He holstered his weapon and raised both hands peacefully. He spoke slowly in English. "We help find a girl. Find who really kill." Mitchell's aim wavered. You'd help? "Find the truth. Stop the war that comes." The farmer gradually lowered his weapon. Martha breathed again, though she knew the danger had only transformed, not ended. Dawn approached, bringing with it the promised confrontation. But now their small group included an unexpected ally, bound by grief and the desperate desire to prevent more bloodshed. "We need a plan," Martha said, "a way to stop this madness before it engulfs us all." Little River nodded solemnly. plan we make together, human to human." As they moved toward the cabin, preparing for the trials ahead, Martha realized her simple act of mercy had irrevocably altered her place in this conflict. No longer just a widow struggling to survive, she had become a bridge between warring peoples, willingly or not. The dawn would either see that bridge burn to ashes or prove the first step toward something unthinkable: peace. The first light of dawn revealed a transformed landscape. What had been Martha's peaceful homestead now resembled a war camp. Little River had signaled the approaching Comanche band using mirror flashes, ancient communication across the vast plains. Within the hour, 15 mounted warriors emerged from the mesquite groves like ghosts materializing from morning mist. At their center rode Quanah himself. Martha had prepared herself for a fearsome war chief, but the reality struck her speechless. He sat astride a magnificent black stallion, his presence commanding without ostentation. Unlike his warriors, who wore full war paint, Quanah's face remained bare, his long braids adorned with only eagle feathers. His eyes, when they met hers, held intelligence that challenged every savage stereotype the frontier preached. "Father," Tawakana stepped forward eagerly. Quanah dismounted with fluid grace, his powerful frame moving with controlled purpose. He embraced his son, speaking rapid Comanche while examining the bandaged shoulder with a healer's careful touch. Only after satisfying himself about Tawakana's condition did he turn to Martha. "You saved my son," Quanah stated in clear English. "Comanche, remember?" Before Martha could respond, Herbert Mitchell inserted himself aggressively. "What about my children? What about Mary?" The war chief studied Mitchell with penetrating assessment. Little River stepped forward, translating Mitchell's earlier story about the raid. As the tale unfolded, Quanah's expression darkened. "Not my warriors," he declared firmly. "We ride for peace talk, not war." "Then who?" Mitchell demanded, grief making him bold despite facing 15 armed Comanche. Quanah exchanged glances with Little River. Their rapid conversation excluded the whites, leaving Martha and Mitchell anxiously interpreting gestures and tone. Finally, the war chief turned to them, kicking Birdband. "They split from Comanche moon ago. Hate whites more than land. They take girl to trade for rifles." "Where?" Mitchell's hand automatically moved toward his weapon, though hopelessly outgunned. "Beyond the Red River, Sacred Canyon." Quanah paused thoughtfully. "But warriors come here first, army chasing. They want confusion, want whites and Comanche to fight each other." Martha grasped the strategy immediately. "They're using Mary as bait to start a war." "Yes." Quanah nodded approvingly, as if pleased with her understanding. "Already working. Rangers come. Settlers gather. They want blood." Dawn continued brightening the sky, and with it came sounds of multiple horses approaching. Dust clouds rose from 3 directions: northeast, southeast, and due east. The converging forces were larger than any of them had expected. Little River had climbed Martha's windmill for better vantage. He called down urgently in Comanche, gesturing across the plains. "What's he saying?" Martha asked Tawakana. "Many soldiers, more than scouts report, maybe 50 men." The boy swallowed hard. "And settlers behind them, with wagons." Wagons meant families, perhaps women and children. If fighting erupted, the massacre could be horrific. Quanah barked orders to his warriors, who began defensive preparations with practiced efficiency. But Martha noticed something different about their approach. They weren't preparing for war, but for defense. "We can't fight here," she declared suddenly. "Not with civilians coming. There has to be another way." Quanah studied her, surprise flickering across his stern features. "White woman worry for both peoples?" "I worry for senseless death," Martha corrected. On both sides, the war chief's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Maybe you understand more than most whites. Herbert Mitchell paced frantically. Understanding won't save Mary. Every minute wasted here is a minute those bastards take her further away. If we run now, Martha reasoned, make ourselves look guilty, they'll chase us forever, brand us all as outlaws. But if we stand together, show them we're not enemies. You think words will stop rangers? Mitchell laughed bitterly. Stop men who've seen their neighbors murdered. Quanah raised his hand for silence. She speaks wisdom. Kicking Bird Band wants war. If we run, we give them war. If we fight here, we give them war. We must. He struggled for the English word. Prove our innocence, Martha supplied. Prove the truth, Quanah agreed. Show whites who the real enemy is. The approaching forces were now visible without the windmill's height. Martha counted at least 40 mounted men from the east, a mixture of Army cavalry, Texas Rangers, and civilian militia. From the north, a smaller group of what appeared to be settlers from Devil's Creek. The western approach held the most cavalry, suggesting Fort Richardson had indeed mobilized. They'll surround us, Martha observed. Cut off all escape. Good, Quanah said surprisingly. Let them come. Let them see. See what? Mitchell demanded. Quanah gestured to his warriors. They began stripping off war paint with water from Martha's well, cleaning weapons of any blood, even braiding small white feathers into their hair. Symbols Martha didn't understand, but which clearly held significance. We show peace, Quanah explained. Not surrender, peace. As preparations continued, Little River descended from the windmill with troubling news. The arriving groups had stopped just beyond rifle range, apparently discussing strategy. More concerning, they'd begun spreading out in a classic encirclement pattern. Captain Braddock leads the Rangers, Martha told Quanah. He's not unreasonable, but he follows orders strictly. And if orders say kill Comanche? The question hung heavy in the morning air. Martha had no answer that wouldn't confirm Quanah's unspoken fears. Tawakana, still weak but determined, proposed an idea. Father, you have a treaty pipe. Show them you came for peace. Martha saw hope flicker in Quanah's eyes. A ceremonial pipe carried sacred significance. Using it for deception would invite spiritual retribution. Its presence alone testified to peaceful intentions, but as Quanah moved to retrieve the pipe from his saddlebag, gunshots cracked from the eastern perimeter. Not rapid fire, but spaced shots. A signal, not an attack. Cannon ready, Little River, translated grimly. They give warning. Surrender or die. Martha felt control slipping away. Despite their preparations, despite the evidence of peaceful intent, the confrontation was escalating exactly as Kicking Bird's warriors had planned. She had to act. I'm going out there, she announced. Talk to them. Before someone starts shooting, you'll get yourself killed, Mitchell protested. Maybe, but I won't let my home become a battleground. She grabbed a white sheet from her washing line, fashioning a crude flag of truce. Quanah stepped forward. I will go with you. No, Martha shook her head firmly. You're what they came for. Seeing you might trigger violence? Let me try first. For a tense moment, the war chief wrestled with the wisdom of her suggestion. Pride warred with strategy in his expression. Finally, he nodded. Take Little River. He carries a peace pipe. Shows Comanche want talk, not fight. Martha agreed to the compromise. Before departing, she embraced Tawakana quickly. The boy had recovered enough to stand straight, though she could see the effort it cost him. Thank you, he whispered, for everything. Stay safe, she replied, then turned to Mitchell. If they shoot, don't start a war over my death. Herbert nodded grimly, understanding the fragile balance that could explode into massacre at any wrong move. Martha and Little River walked toward the eastern line of soldiers, the white flag held high. Dust kicked up by the morning breeze made their eyes water. As they approached, Martha could distinguish individual faces. Men she knew from Fort Lancaster, younger rangers she'd sold eggs to, grizzled cavalry veterans who'd patrolled these lands for decades. Captain Braddock rode forward, flanked by a military officer bearing colonel's insignia. Behind them, civilian militia aimed rifles with trembling hands, their fear making them dangerous. "Mrs. Reynolds," Braddock called, reining in his horse, "step away from the savage and explain yourself." "Captain, this is Little River. He's here under the flag of truce with a peace offering." She gestured to the pipe the scout held reverently. The military colonel, Maxwell, she recognized from town meetings, studied the pipe with interest. Unlike the Rangers, regular army often dealt diplomatically with tribes. "I am Colonel Robert Maxwell," he announced formally. "You're harboring known hostiles, madam. That constitutes treason against Texas and the United States." "They're not hostiles, Colonel. War Chief Quanah came to retrieve his wounded son, a boy I helped because Christian charity demands it. They haven't attacked anyone." Mitchell Place. "Is this different?" someone shouted from behind the line. Martha recognized voices from Devil's Creek settlement. "The Mitchell family was attacked by Kicking Bird's band," Martha explained quickly. "Different Comanche entirely. They're the ones who want war, who kidnapped Mary Mitchell for that exact purpose." "Lies," another settler spat. "Heard it before. Peaceful Indians just before they murder women and children." Braddock raised his hand for silence. "Colonel, ma'am, we've been tracking Quanah for days. He's been hitting supply trains, stealing horses." "No," Little River spoke for the first time, his accented English carrying clearly. "We pursue Kicking Bird, stop them stealing. They use our name, make us look bad." "Why should we believe that?" Maxwell demanded. Martha had prepared for this. "Because Quanah brought only 15 warriors for a rescue mission." "Does that sound like an attack force?" "Because they've been clean in war paint, not applying it. Because they're displaying peace symbols." She could see consideration flickering in Maxwell's eyes, but Braddock remained skeptical. The Ranger captain had survived. Too many peaceful encounters that turned deadly. "Stand aside, Mrs. Reynolds," Braddock ordered. "Let us take the Comanche. If they're truly innocent, military justice will sort it out." Military justice that once sentenced 38 Indians to hanging in Minnesota before Lincoln commuted. "All but 3?" Martha challenged. "Justice that shoots fleeing children in the back?" Her words struck home. Several soldiers shifted uncomfortably, remembering controversies that had stained their service. But before Maxwell could respond, new sounds disrupted the standoff. From the north, riders approached at breakneck speed. Martha's heart sank as she recognized them. Samuel Crawford and his militia band from Mineral Wells, notorious for their hatred of all indigenous peoples. "My God," Maxwell muttered. "Crawford's here without authorization." Crawford and 20 men thundered past the military cordon, ignoring Braddock's orders to halt. They rode in wild formation, weapons drawn, war whoops that mocked Comanche custom, echoing across the plains. "No!" Martha realized their intention. "They're going to attack!" Little River was already moving, sprinting back toward the cabin despite his middle-aged legs. Martha ran too, but Crawford's riders had a substantial lead. She watched in horror as they approached Quanah's defensive position, guns blazing. The Comanche warriors responded with disciplined restraint that shocked even Martha. They didn't return fire. Instead, they formed a protective wall around the cabin, shields raised, taking bullets meant for Martha's home. Only when Crawford's men charged directly at them did they finally shoot back. But Quanah was shouting orders. In Comanche, clearly commanding control. His warriors aimed for horses, not riders. The deliberate mercy in their tactics couldn't have been clearer. As Martha reached the cabin yard, chaos reigned. Crawford's raiders circled, firing repeatedly. 3 horses had fallen, riders pinned but alive. 2 warriors nursed wounds but continued standing. Martha's cabin bore bullet holes but remained intact. Quanah himself stood in the exact center of the yard, arms crossed, making himself the largest target imaginable. He was neither shot nor moved, despite bullets whining around him. The show of courage stopped even Crawford's men momentarily. "See," Martha screamed at the pursuing soldiers. "See how they fight. If they wanted war, we'd all be dead." Colonel Maxwell had ridden forward to witness the engagement. As his troops arrived, the scene before them contradicted every expectation. Comanche warriors deliberately missing kill shots, Crawford's men firing wildly in racist fury, and Quanah standing unafraid, projecting leadership that transcended cultural boundaries. "Cease fire," Maxwell commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I order all men to cease fire immediately." The colonel's authority carried where Braddock's hadn't. Gradually, the shooting died to sporadic pops, then silence was broken only by groaning wounded. Herbert Mitchell emerged from the cabin where Martha had insisted he stay. His face showed shock at witnessing Comanche restraint. The men who supposedly murdered his sons and took his daughter had just refused multiple opportunities to massacre settlers. "Where's Mary?" he asked Quanah directly. "Where exactly?" Quanah lowered his arms slowly. "Sacred Canyon, 30 miles north, but Kicking Bird have many warriors. We need alliance to save her." "Alliance," Maxwell repeated carefully. "You're proposing to work with us?" "Enemy of both," Quanah stated simply. "Rogue band endangers all tribes, gives the army excuse for total war. We stop them together, maybe stop a greater war." Crawford, whose horse had been shot from under him, dragged himself up, spitting fury. "Don't listen to savage lies. They're all the same, murderers and thieves." But something had shifted. The soldiers who'd witnessed Comanche restraint exchanged glances. Civilians who'd arrived ready for vengeance now saw a more complex situation. Captain Braddock emerged as the voice of skepticism's last stand. "Even if we believe you about Kicking Bird, and that's a massive if, how do we know this isn't all performance? How do we know you won't turn on us the moment we trust you?" Martha stepped forward. She removed the bear-claw necklace Tawakana had given her, holding it up for all to see. "They already had the chance when they surrounded my cabin. When I was alone and vulnerable, they protected me instead." She turned to Quanah. "Tell them about life debt, about sacred obligations." The war chief nodded slowly. "Comanche law. Save a life, you answer for that life. White woman saved my son. Now her. Life belongs to me too. To harm her." He spread his hands. "To harm her brings shame beyond death." "And if the alliance fails," Maxwell pressed, "if we ride together and you betray us?" "If I betray you," Quanah met his gaze steadily, "my own people will cast me out. I will die nameless. My children will have no clan. You understand such a price?" The colonel did understand. Tribal society's ultimate punishment, becoming unperson, represented a fate worse than death for someone like Quanah. His readiness to invoke such stakes carried weight even among his enemies. Mitchell spoke up. "My daughter's life depends on what we decide now. Hate aside, practicality demands we cannot reach Sacred Canyon before they move her again, unless—" He looked at Quanah. "Unless you know secret routes, unless your horses outlast ours." "We know," Little River confirmed. "We know sacred paths. Army maps don't show." The moment hung suspended like morning mist before harsh sun. Two peoples who had fought for generations faced a choice: continue ancestral hatred or forge desperate alliance against common threat. "Colonel." Maxwell dismounted, removed his gloves deliberately. "Against every protocol, every precedent, and probably my career." He extended his hand to Quanah. "I accept your alliance, temporarily, to save the girl and stop this rogue band." Quanah studied the offered hand, then clasped it in the traditional manner, forearm to forearm, warrior to warrior. The gesture sent ripples through both assembled groups. "Crawford," Maxwell barked at the bigoted militia leader, "you're confined to camp. Anyone who can't follow orders of this joint mission is to remain here. Several settlers and even some cavalry troopers chose to stay behind, unable or unwilling to trust Comanche warriors. Martha was surprised to see some rangers elect to join the mission. Professional respect for enemy warriors who demonstrated such control under fire. As the unlikely alliance prepared to ride, Martha faced another decision. The mission would be dangerous, requiring speed that left little room for protecting civilians. Yet how could she remain behind after precipitating these events? Quanah settled her dilemma. Medicine Woman rides with us. Warriors trust her. Whites trust her. She keeps the alliance strong. Tawakana, despite protests from both his father and Martha, insisted on joining. "Father, you ride for family honor. I ride for family truth." Within the hour, 20 Comanche warriors and 30 cavalry troopers prepared to depart. Martha found herself astride a gentle army mare positioned between Quanah and Colonel Maxwell at the column's head. Herbert Mitchell rode nearby, driven by paternal desperation that overrode years of prejudice. As they headed north towards Sacred Canyon, Martha reflected on the morning's transformation. Dawn had arrived, heralding war. Mid-morning saw the forging of an alliance that might prevent it. What would sunset bring? The prairie stretched before them, endless vista where anything could happen. Where Mary Mitchell waited, alive or dead. Where Kicking Bird's warriors prepared for confrontation. Where the future of white Comanche relations might be decided not on the battlefield, but through unprecedented cooperation. The wind shifted, carrying scents of sage and distant rain. Storm clouds gathered on the northern horizon. Heaven itself seemed to anticipate the coming conflict. Behind them, Martha's cabin stood as testament to where this strange journey began. Ahead, Sacred Canyon promised either redemption or catastrophe. She touched the bear claw necklace one more time, drawing strength from its reminder. Sometimes the greatest courage lies in seeing humanity in one's enemies. The alliance rode on, shadow of doubt still hovering, but hope riding beside it. The combined force of cavalry and Comanche warriors moved swiftly across the prairie, following trails invisible to white eyes. Quanah led them along ancient buffalo paths that wound between hidden gullies and across sacred grounds, untouched by settler feet. The Comanche riders flowed over the landscape like water, their ponies barely seeming to touch ground, while cavalry mounts labored to maintain pace. Martha found herself caught between two worlds in more than just physical space. She rode between Colonel Maxwell and Quanah, serving as interpreter not just of language but of culture. Every few miles brought new points of friction between the temporary allies. "They're using too much water," complained Sergeant Foster when the Comanche stopped to let horses drink freely from a hidden spring. "Cavalry discipline says ration everything." "Horse go lame in heat," Little River explained, patiently. "Better slow horse than dead horse." Such exchanges repeated throughout the morning. The whites expected rigid military formation. The Comanche preferred fluid, adaptable movement. Cavalry tactics emphasized overwhelming force. Comanche strategy valued cunning and surprise. Yet gradually, both sides began recognizing strengths in the other's approach. Tawakana rode beside Martha, his young face tight with effort to conceal remaining pain from his shoulder wound. He had insisted on joining despite his father's concerns, claiming he knew the fastest routes to Sacred Canyon. Martha suspected his real motivation ran deeper, to prove himself worthy of his father's respect by helping save a white girl. "Your shoulder hurts," she observed as they rested the horses at noon. "Pain teaches strength," he replied stoically, though gratitude flickered in his eyes when she offered him extra water. "Your father is different than I expected," Martha admitted. "The stories in town paint all Comanche as savages. Tawakana considered this. What stories do your people tell about Comanche medicine women? Medicine women? Martha looked confused. You heal with herbs. You see sickness before it shows. You brave Council Chief Owl for the boy's life. He smiled slightly. Some warriors say you have puha, power. The concept startled Martha. She had never considered that the Comanche might view her actions through their cultural lens, transforming a Christian widow's charity into something resembling their own spiritual beliefs. As the alliance pressed north, signs of Kicking Bird's passage became clearer. Abandoned campsites revealed tracks of at least 20 warriors, plus one walking figure in white women's boots, Mary Mitchell. The trail grew fresher with each mile, suggesting they were gaining ground. 2 hours past noon, a Comanche scout returned with alarming news. Rapid words flowed between him and Quanah, punctuated by urgent gestures. "What is it?" Maxwell demanded. "Another band approaches Sacred Canyon," Quanah translated. "Apache. 20 warriors, maybe more." Apache. Maxwell's face darkened. "Are they allied with Kicking Bird?" "Enemy of all Comanche," Quanah stated flatly. "If they find us cooperating with you—" He made a cutting gesture across his throat. The situation had become lethally complex. Not only did they face Kicking Bird's renegades, but Apache warriors threatened from another direction. The Apache had no love for either whites or Comanche, often raiding both groups with impunity. "We need to split forces," Maxwell proposed. "Some of us deal with the Apache while others pursue Kicking Bird." "No." Quanah's refusal was immediate. "Apache see divided enemy. They attack both. We must face all threats as one." The war chief's tactics proved prescient. Within the hour, as they approached Sacred Canyon's outer ridges, Apache scouts appeared on surrounding hilltops. The distinctive silhouettes, shorter hair, different weaponry, marked them clearly. "They're watching us," reported Captain Braddock, who had positioned sharpshooters on flanking ridges. At least a dozen visible, probably more hidden. Martha felt the alliance's fragility as both cavalry troopers and Comanche warriors responded to the Apache presence with barely controlled aggression. Ancient enmities threatened to shatter their temporary cooperation. "Father," Tawakana spoke, urgently in Comanche. Quanah listened, then nodded slowly. "My son suggests," the war chief translated, "we use white's advantage." "Which advantage?" Maxwell asked warily. "Apache fear your long guns. Repeater rifles they cannot match. If you show strength, they may back away from direct fight." It was the first time Quanah had openly acknowledged his warriors' technological disadvantage. The admission carried enormous import, a recognition that cooperation offered benefits. Neither side could achieve alone. Maxwell made a calculated decision. "Braddock, have your best marksman demonstrate range, but only warning shots." The Rangers positioned themselves on elevated ground, their Spencer rifles capable of accuracy beyond Apache bow range. The demonstration proved effective. Well placed. Shots kicked up dust near Apache positions without directly threatening life. The message, "We see you, we can reach you, we choose not to kill." The Apache response came not through violence, but withdrawal. One by one, the watching figures melted away from hilltops, maintaining surveillance, but respecting demonstrated reach. "Clever," Quanah acknowledged to Martha. "Like a coyote. Show teeth, avoid fight unless necessary." As they entered Sacred Canyon, proper, the landscape transformed dramatically. Towering red rock walls rose like ancient monuments, creating a natural labyrinth. Little pools of water collected in stone basins, supporting surprising pockets of green vegetation. Buffalo petroglyphs, decorated cliff faces, testifying to the canyon's spiritual significance. "This place is holy to your people," Martha observed. "Very old," Quanah confirmed, "where earth spirits dwell. Kicking Bird defiles it with raid plans. Another reason we stop him." The trail became harder to follow among the maze of passages and false paths. Comanche scouts proved invaluable. Reading signs, white eyes missed entirely, disturbed pebbles, bent grass, even air currents that carried recent scents. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Little River returned with critical intelligence. Kicking, Bird's Camp lay a mere 2 miles ahead, occupying a natural fortress where the canyon forked. More significantly, Mary Mitchell was alive, though weakened by 3 days of captivity. "How many warriors?" Maxwell demanded. 22, Little River reported, plus Apache joined them, 6 warriors. They talk, plan an ambush for anyone who follows. The alliance faced its greatest test. Apache and renegade Comanche working together represented an unprecedented threat. Worse, they had fortified a position that funneled attackers into killing zones. Direct assault would be suicide, Braddock assessed grimly. Even with our numbers. Quanah studied the canyon walls thoughtfully. Maybe no direct assault needed. Over. The next hour, the war chief revealed battlefield genius that impressed even hardened cavalry officers. He proposed using the canyon's acoustics to create confusion, positioning warriors on opposite cliffs to create crossfire illusions, drawing defenders into exposing themselves through calculated reveals of force. "It's brilliant," Maxwell admitted. "But it requires perfect coordination between our groups. One mistake and we shoot each other instead of the enemy." "That is why she is important," Quanah pointed to Martha. "She ride between you and me. Keep understanding clear." Martha felt the weight of responsibility settle like a physical burden. Lives on both sides would depend on her ability to bridge linguistic and cultural gaps in the heat of combat. As preparations continued, Herbert Mitchell pulled Martha aside. His face showed the strain of 3 days' desperate hope and fear. "If Mary sees me fighting alongside Indians," he whispered, "she might think what? That you value her life above prejudice?" Martha gripped his arm. "That you're man enough to see the truth despite hatred? She'll understand, Herbert. Girls are wiser than we credit." Mitchell nodded, but uncertainty lingered. Martha suspected similar doubts plagued warriors on both sides. How would their peoples view this alliance? Would cooperation be seen as strength or betrayal? The sun began its descent toward the canyon rim, painting rocks shades of blood and gold. Quanah issued final instructions to his warriors, while Maxwell's officers prepared cavalry contingents. Martha noticed how military discipline and Comanche fluidity had begun merging, cavalry moving more stealthily, Comanche maintaining better. Formation, Tawakana approached as Martha checked her ammunition, a small revolver Jacob had insisted she carry, though she'd never fired it at a human being. "Medicine woman," he said seriously, "if father falls, his men look to you for wisdom. You keep peace between peoples when war spirit rises." The boy's words struck Martha with unexpected force. She was being cast in a role far beyond her experience. Not just translator, but potential. Leader in a crisis that could reshape frontier relations. "I'll do my best," she promised. Dusk deepened as the alliance moved into position. The plan called for simultaneous pressure from multiple directions, using shadows and canyon echoes to make their numbers seem greater. Cavalry positioned sharpshooters on the eastern rim, while Comanche warriors scaled western walls like ghosts. Martha rode with Maxwell and Quanah toward the canyon fork, where Kicking Bird held Mary. As they approached, she noticed how the two leaders had unconsciously synchronized their movements, both scanning the same sightlines, both anticipating danger from identical directions. Leadership transcended cultural boundaries. The first sign of enemy presence came not through sight, but sound. Apache sentries began a rhythmic drumbeat, a war challenge that echoed off canyon walls, multiplying until it seemed an army approached rather than their modest force. Quanah responded with a war cry that shattered the evening air. Not aggressive, but authoritative, the sound of a chief calling warriors to account. The effect was immediate. Several drums fell silent. "They know you," Martha observed. "Word travels fast," Quanah replied. "They wonder why I ride with blue coats." As darkness fell completely, the alliance struck. Rangers opened fire from elevated positions, their muzzle flashes creating the illusion of overwhelming numbers. Comanche warriors released arrows in sophisticated volley patterns that forced defenders to seek cover from multiple angles. But Kicking Bird's response proved cunning. He thrust Mary Mitchell forward into firelight, using her as a human shield. The girl stood terror-stricken but defiant, her dress torn but her bearing unbroken. "Hold fire!" Maxwell commanded instantly. "Cease fire!" Herbert Mitchell half rose, in his stirrups, desperate to advance. But Martha caught his reins. "Wait. If we charge blindly, we risk everything." Kicking Bird emerged from shadows, a lean warrior with ritual scars marking his face. He held a lance pressed against Mary's throat, his English heavily accented but clear. "Turn back," he commanded, "or white girl dies. Comanche who ride with you dishonor ancestors." Quanah guided his horse forward slowly, hands visible and empty. "Kicking Bird, you shamed Comanche by using a child as a weapon. Release her. Face me warrior to warrior. Traitor!" Kicking Bird spat. "You lead bluecoats to sacred land. For this you die nameless." The situation was balanced on a knife's edge. Martha realized that for Kicking Bird, ideology had become more important than tactics. He would rather die in the purifying flame of doctrine than negotiate. But then Mary Mitchell did something unexpected. Despite the lance at her throat, she spoke. "Please don't kill me because of me. Enough people have died." The girl's courage transformed the moment. Kicking Bird's certainty flickered. Even some of his warriors shifted uncomfortably, using a brave child as a shield, undermined the warrior code they claimed to uphold. Tawakana chose that instant to act. With recovered strength that belied his injury, he urged his pony forward toward Kicking Bird. The renegade leader turned, distracted by this challenge from Quanah's son. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. A cavalry sharpshooter used Kicking Bird's momentary distraction to target the lance, hoping to shoot it from his hand. The bullet struck true, splintering wood and causing Kicking Bird to flinch away from Mary. Instantly, three things occurred. Apache warriors, seeing their ally threatened, launched arrows into the alliance ranks. A trooper cried out as feathered shafts found marks. Quanah's warriors, protecting their leader's son, charged forward in perfect synchronization. Mary Mitchell, freed from Kicking Bird's grasp, ran toward her father with sobbing relief. Combat erupted across the canyon floor. Moonlight and muzzle flashes created a stroboscopic nightmare as bullets and arrows crisscrossed lethal patterns. Martha found herself separated from the command group, her horse spooked by gunfire into a side passage. As she struggled to control her mount, she heard familiar voices speaking Comanche nearby. Following the sound, she discovered three of Kicking Bird's warriors cornering two wounded cavalry soldiers. The warriors were arguing whether to take captives or execute enemies. Thinking only of preventing unnecessary killing, Martha spurred her horse between the groups. To her shock, the warriors recognized her instantly. Word of the medicine woman who saved Quanah's son had spread even here. "Please," she pleaded in broken Comanche, mixing it with English. "No more death. Alliance protect all life." The warriors exchanged uncertain glances. Their code demanded blood vengeance, yet their tradition also respected medicine women who saved lives. Martha's plea created conflict between competing values. Her intervention bought precious time. Quanah appeared with several of his warriors. Having tracked her horse's path, the war chief's presence resolved the standoff immediately. "Release soldiers," he commanded. "Kicking Bird faces us, not them." To Martha's amazement, the warriors obeyed. The wounded cavalry troopers were helped rather than harmed. the respect for Quanah's authority transcending even loyalties to Kicking Bird's cause. But the main battle continued at the canyon fork. Martha rejoined Maxwell to find the situation deteriorating. Kicking Bird had rallied his remaining warriors into a defensive circle, using natural fortifications effectively. Apache allies provided covering fire that pinned down cavalry advance. More critically, night fighting had created chaos. Allies fired on allies, enemies escaped into shadows, and the cramped canyon prevented maneuver warfare. "We're taking too many casualties," Maxwell reported grimly, "and giving too few." Martha had an idea born of desperation. She remembered Tawakana's demonstration of Comanche signal calls, whistles that could communicate complex messages. If she could learn them quickly. "Quanah!" She grabbed his arm urgently. "Teach me war signals, now!" The war chief understood immediately. While Martha struggled to master whistled commands, he began coordinating a new strategy. Using her voice as relay, he could place warriors and cavalry with precision impossible through gunfire chaos. The plan's execution proved harrowing. Martha rode along battle lines, repeating Quanah's signals that directed warriors to suppress Apache positions, while cavalry focused on Kicking Bird's circle. Her presence, white woman carrying Comanche commands, confused enemies while inspiring allies. The tide turned when Kicking Bird made a critical error. Driven by rage at seeing a white woman command Comanche warriors, he broke from a defensive position to charge her directly. Quanah had anticipated this prideful reaction. As Kicking Bird raised his rifle toward Martha, the war chief's own shot caught him square in the chest. The symbolism was perfect, Comanche chief killing a renegade who would harm the alliance's bridge between peoples. With their leader fallen, Kicking Bird's warriors lost cohesion. Quanah could have ordered complete destruction, but chose differently. "Surrender, warriors, live," he called in Comanche. "Sacred law protects those who yield blade edge." One by one, weapons lowered. Apache allies, seeing their Comanche partners captured or surrendered, melted back into canyon shadows. Within minutes, a battle that could have become a massacre ended. In controlled victory, dawnlight began seeping into Sacred Canyon, revealing the night's toll. Dead and wounded lay scattered across bloody rock. But miraculous, only 5 fatalities among the Alliance, and those primarily from the initial ambush fire. Kicking Bird's band had lost 8 warriors, with 12 surrendering alive. Mary Mitchell clung to her father, her ordeal ending in reunion rather than tragedy. Tawakana had emerged heroically unscathed, despite his reckless charge. Most importantly, the alliance had held together under ultimate test. As morning strengthened, Martha surveyed consequences of choices made days ago. Her simple act of mercy toward a wounded boy had cascaded into this moment, cavalry and Comanche working together, enemies choosing surrender over death. A girl returned safely to her father. Colonel Maxwell approached Quanah, both men bearing wounds and exhaustion. Without words, they clasped arms again, not the tentative gesture of alliance formation, but the solid grip of shared combat. "We keep peace?" Quanah asked simply. Maxwell nodded slowly. "As much as we can." Though explaining this to Fort Richardson, he shook his head ruefully. "Explain with truth," the war chief suggested. "Common enemy makes common cause." As they prepared to ride back toward Martha's cabin with prisoners and wounded, she realized their victory was only beginning. The real battle awaited, convincing their respective peoples that today's alliance should become tomorrow's lasting peace. But looking around at men who had moments ago faced death together, Martha dared hope. If frontier enemies could become allies at Sacred Canyon's bloody crossroads, perhaps other impossibilities might yet be achieved. The journey back from Sacred Canyon tested alliances forged in battle. 12 Comanche prisoners rode under guard alongside alliance forces, while wounded warriors and soldiers shared the same medical wagon. Martha divided her attention between treating injuries and mediating the countless small conflicts that arose during the 2-day return. "They're watching me like prey," complained a young cavalry trooper whose arm she was bandaging. 2 captured warriors had been staring intently as she worked. Martha glanced up to see the Comanche prisoners weren't hostile, but curious, discussing her techniques in rapid whispers. "They're interested in how I treat that wound differently than their medicine men would." She turned to the prisoners and asked in broken Comanche, "You heal with different herbs?" The eldest prisoner, a weathered warrior with graying temples, responded slowly in English. "We use black mallow, makes blood stick together faster. White medicine is strange. What began as suspicion transformed into unexpected exchange." The old warrior demonstrated his method while Martha showed hers with willow bark for pain. Soon, Comanche and cavalry wounded lay side by side, comparing remedies that crossed cultural boundaries, yet tensions persisted. Samuel Crawford, who had followed at distance with his militia band, sent word demanding prisoners be handed over. For frontier justice, a euphemism for lynching, Colonel Maxwell firmly refused, citing military authority, but the challenge exposed fractures that could still shatter their fragile peace. Mary Mitchell proved an unexpected bridge. During rest stops, she sat with Tawakana, comparing their captivity experiences. The young Comanche had faced his own imprisonment in Texas settlements 3 years prior. Their shared understanding of imprisonment's terror created empathy between generations that might have continued ancestral hatreds. "They gave me food every day," Mary told her father, surprised. "Even shared their blankets when it got cold. They just wanted to trade me for rifles." Such admissions complicated simplistic narratives. Captors who showed mercy, rescuers who questioned their violence, these nuances disturbed comfortable certainties about frontier warfare. As they approached Martha's farm on the 3rd day, smoke rose from multiple properties. Her heart sank, realizing news of their alliance had preceded them. Some settlers had already fled, taking the unusual cooperation as a sign of impending Indian uprising. Others had fortified their homesteads, preparing for war they assumed must follow. The reception committee waiting at Martha's cabin reflected Texas's divided soul. Sheriff Miller stood with a dozen civilians, while Samuel Crawford commanded another group at a hostile distance. Between them, townsfolk clustered in uncertain neutrality. "Mrs. Reynolds," Sheriff Miller called as they rode up, "you'll need to explain yourself to the county judge. Charges of conspiring with hostile Indians have been filed by whom?" Martha dismounted deliberately, keeping her voice steady despite exhaustion. "By the family of Robert Johnson, for instance," Crawford interrupted from across the yard. "Remember how their homestead burned while you harbored savages?" Quanah understood enough English to grasp the accusation. Before Martha could respond, the war chief guided his horse forward until he faced Crawford directly. The militia leader's hand moved toward his weapon until Quanah spoke. "Johnson house burned by Kicking Bird warriors. Same who take white girl. We stop them." He gestured to the prisoners. "These men give truth. Their leader dead for crimes against both peoples." Colonel Maxwell reinforced Quanah's words. "The war chief speaks accurately. We have 12 witnesses among his own former warriors who will testify to Kicking Bird's actions." The captured warriors, faced with choice between tribal loyalty and truth, chose a third path. Their eldest spoke, "Kicking Bird dream of great war. Dream make him crazy. We follow chief, but some words were poison. He bring dishonor using white child as a weapon." His admission rippled through the assembled crowd. Even Crawford's supporters shifted uncomfortably. Warriors criticizing their own leaders spoke with authority that transcended cultural boundaries. "This doesn't change anything," Crawford insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "Indians attacking whites, whites helping Indians. It's all backwards, all wrong." "No," Quanah stated with finality, "is forward. Tomorrow being born today, the war chief's words struck with prophetic power. Martha realized they had entered a pivotal moment where individual choices would echo through generations. Judge Henry Thompson arrived the next afternoon, having ridden hard from San Antonio. A practical man shaped by frontier justice, he established an impromptu court in Martha's cabin yard. Both cavalry and Comanche representatives presented testimony, while civilians watched from a nervous distance. The evidence proved overwhelming. Prisoners detailed Kicking Bird's descent into extremism, his gathering of like-minded warriors who viewed any peace as betrayal. They described how he had raided isolated homesteads, always careful to make attacks appear random rather than coordinated. Why? Didn't other chiefs stop him? Judge Thompson demanded. Quanah answered carefully, Comanche is not like white government. Chiefs lead by wisdom, not force. Warriors choose who to follow. We try to talk reason. When talk fails, we stop him ourselves. Mary. Mitchell's testimony carried unexpected weight. When asked why Comanche treated her well despite capture, she explained, They never hurt me. They said I was a trade gift, not a war prisoner. Some even called it guest friendship. Though they didn't let me leave, they treated me with their version of honor. Her nuanced account challenged both demonization and romanticization of the Comanche. They were neither noble savages nor bloodthirsty monsters, but humans navigating impossible circumstances. Colonel Maxwell's official report detailed the military perspective. He acknowledged tactical brilliance among Comanche warriors, their intimate knowledge of terrain, their discipline under Quanah's command. Yet he also noted times when cavalry training proved crucial, particularly in treating wounded, managing prisoners, and maintaining supply lines. Gentlemen, Maxwell concluded, what we witnessed at Sacred Canyon was not betrayal of either people, but necessary alliance against common threat. If we cannot cooperate selectively against shared enemies, we condemn ourselves to perpetual war. After 2 days of testimony, Judge Thompson rendered judgment. He dropped all charges against Martha Reynolds, citing her actions as consistent with Christian charity and effective mediation. He recommended Colonel Maxwell for commendation rather than court-martial. Most surprisingly, he proposed a formal peace council including Comanche chiefs, military representatives, and civilian leaders. The alternative, he stated bluntly, is continuing a war that will devastate this territory. Neither side has strength to completely defeat the other. Only wisdom can end this conflict. Crawford and his supporters rejected this conclusion, but their influence was waning. Too many had witnessed cooperation work, had seen cavalry and Comanche overcome hatred for higher purpose. As judgment concluded, Quanah approached Martha privately. Medicine woman, he said formally, you give life to my son. Now you help find a path to life for both peoples. Comanche, remember, he presented her with an eagle feather, highest honor his culture could bestow on an outsider. The symbolism overwhelmed her. This ornament, earned through courage and bridge building, meant more than any frontier award settlers might offer. In the following days, the uneasy alliance worked to cement fragile peace. Comanche prisoners, rather than face trial that could inflame tensions, were offered a choice: prison in designated territory or exile from Texas. Most chose exile, accepting they had followed misguided leadership that endangered tribal unity. The proposal for a permanent peace council gained surprising momentum. Several cavalry officers, impressed by Comanche fighting abilities, advocated for a buffer zone where both peoples could trade rather than raid. Some settlers, exhausted by perpetual vigilance, voiced support for fixed boundaries that promised real security rather than endless war. Yet resistance persisted. Some cavalry officers demand complete Comanche submission. Certain war chiefs refused any treaty with land takers. The peace Martha helped achieve remained precarious, requiring constant nurturing like a garden in drought. 1 week after Sacred Canyon, Tawakana's shoulder had healed sufficiently for the Comanche warriors to prepare for departure. The boy had matured visibly during their ordeal, carrying himself with quiet confidence earned through action rather than boast. "Will you return to visit?" Martha asked him during farewell preparations. "Father says a new path needs new bridges," he replied thoughtfully. "Maybe I learn more white words, help speak between peoples." Quanah had been listening. "My son speaks wisdom. Bridges need builders on both sides." He turned to Martha directly. "You keep the cabin where the alliance began. When councils meet, we meet here first. Sacred ground now." The designation of her humble homestead as negotiation site struck Martha with responsibility's weight. This simple cabin, where desperate mercy had saved a boy's life, now stood as a symbol of possible reconciliation. Herman Mitchell had undergone his own transformation. The man who'd arrived ready to massacre every Indian now escorted his daughter home with a newfound perspective. Before departing, he sought Quanah privately. "I spent years hating your people," he admitted through Martha's translation. "Turns out I was hating the wrong ones." Quanah nodded gravely. "Easy mistake. Hate makes all faces look the same." "I'm selling my property," Mitchell continued, "taking Mary where she doesn't see constant reminders of fear. But I'll tell everyone the truth of what happened here, how you saved her when others would have let her die as leverage." As the Comanche prepared final departure, Colonel Maxwell drafted his official report to Fort Richardson and the War Department. He wrote not of defeat or victory, but of necessity. Traditional hostilities proved counterproductive when facing mutual threat. The experiment of cooperation, though unprecedented, proved tactically sound and strategically enlightened. Recommend consideration for adjusted frontier policy that acknowledges indigenous territorial claims while establishing clear boundaries and protocols for interaction. The report would cause controversy in San Antonio and Washington. Some would call Maxwell traitor to his uniform. Others would recognize practical wisdom. Absolute victory remained impossible, but practical coexistence might be achieved. As Comanche warriors mounted for journey north, Martha realized fundamental shifts had occurred during these 7 transformative days. The frontier's rigid divisions, savage versus civilized, enemy versus ally, had blurred beyond simple restoration. Samuel Crawford made one final attempt to disrupt departure. He and 7 hardcore followers positioned themselves between the Comanche column and northern route, weapons drawn. "No Comanche leaves Texas alive," Crawford declared. "Not after what they've done." The confrontation might have exploded into final massacre, but unexpected voices rose in protest. Several settlers who had initially supported Crawford's vigilantism now stepped forward. "They saved the Mitchell girl," called one farmer. "They fought with our cavalry. Lost 2 sons to those you call enemy," added another, "but witnessed enough to know these particular Indians helped stop worse killing. Even some of Crawford's own militia lowered their weapons." The erosion of absolute certainty infected hate's purity. When violence no longer offered clear moral justification, some men rediscovered doubt. Colonel Maxwell positioned cavalry troopers between Crawford's men and the departing Comanche. "The alliance held firm during the crisis," he stated. "It holds firm now. Anyone fire on warriors will face military court-martial." Crawford recognized defeat. With support dissolving and military authority arrayed against him, he retreated with his diminished band. But Martha knew men like him would never truly accept change. Old hatreds die slowly, if at all. The Comanche column prepared to disappear into Texas vastness. Quanah raised hand in final gesture, not a threatening fist, but an open palm in peace. His warriors followed his lead, acknowledging watchers with dignity rather than hostility. Tawakana lingered longest. He had tied eagle feather to his reins. Alongside bear claw necklace, Martha had returned to him. These tokens would carry story of unlikely healing that bridged cultures. When the full moon rises, he promised Martha. "I signal from Yellow Ridge. If you see smoke, know the Peace Council approaches." "I'll watch," she assured him. "I'll keep the bridge strong from this side." As Comanche riders receded into prairie shimmer, Martha surveyed the transformation surrounding her. The cabin bore scars of recent conflict, bullet holes, scorch marks, blood-stained earth. Yet it stood intact, witnesses to improbable alliance between hereditary enemies. Sheriff Miller approached, hat in hand. "Reckon I owe you an apology, Mrs. Reynolds. Doubted your judgment, something fierce." "We all doubted, Sheriff. Fear makes fools of everyone." He nodded slowly. "What changed your mind? What made you help that boy when every reasonable person would have left him to die?" Martha considered the question that would echo through the growing legend of Sacred Canyon Alliance. "I don't think reason had much to do with it. Sometimes humanity just recognizes itself. Beyond color, beyond language, beyond war." As the sun set on this pivotal day, Martha found herself surrounded by neighbors who saw her differently. No longer the strange widow who sheltered enemies, she had become something new. Mediator, bridge builder, keeper of a homestead transformed into holy ground. That night, alone in her cabin, Martha wrote in her journal, "7 days ago, I chose charity over caution, saving a boy's life. That choice birthed an alliance that saved the girl's life, prevented war's escalation, and planted seeds of peace. I understand now why wisdom traditions speak of single acts rippling across time's ocean. One choice, made bravely, can alter destiny's current." Outside her window, stars emerged in the Texas sky that had witnessed countless raids, countless deaths, countless failures to see humanity in the other. Tonight, same stars shone on land where enemies had become temporary allies, where bridge building proved possible even across foundations of hate. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Critics would question the sacred worth of reconciliation. New crises would test alliances, old wounds would still demand healing attention. But tonight, peace took first hesitant steps toward permanence. And Martha Reynolds, widow, unlikely diplomat, newly adopted Comanche medicine woman, had earned a place in history as witness to transformation that would echo through generations. The cabin settled with evening cool, each creak now familiar rather than threatening. Martha touched an eagle feather hanging above her door, reminder that bridges, once built with courage and wisdom, could withstand storms of doubt that inevitably followed. She had saved a boy. In return, she had helped, save the possibility of peace itself, worthy exchange for any lifetime. 6 months after Sacred Canyon, Martha Reynolds stood on her porch watching morning light paint the prairie gold. The cabin bore subtle changes. A new room added for when peace delegations stayed overnight, a water trough large enough for multiple horses, dual flagpoles where both American and Comanche medicine flags could fly during negotiations. Life had settled into rhythms unimaginable before that fateful day when she'd found Tawakana bleeding in her field. Each full moon brought visitors, alternating between Comanche delegations and cavalry representatives. Her cabin had become the unlikely heart of frontier diplomacy. "Coffee's ready," she called Lieutenant James Brennan, who now coordinated military presence during peace councils. The young officer had replaced Maxwell after the colonel's promotion to oversee territorial indigenous relations across Texas. Brennan entered, removing his hat respectfully. Daily interaction had transformed their relationship from distant courtesy to genuine friendship. "Will the Comanche delegation arrive today or tomorrow?" he asked, settling into the chair Quanah now claimed as his during visits. "Tomorrow at sunrise," Martha confirmed, pouring coffee. Quanah sent word through the signal station at Red Mountain. The signal stations, elevated positions where mirrors flashed coded messages across vast distances, represented one practical Innovation, born from alliance necessity. Comanche and cavalry had developed shared signaling systems, reducing dangerous misunderstandings that once sparked violence. Brennan sipped his coffee, grown accustomed to Martha's distinctive sage honey blend. Heard Crawford's been stirring trouble again. Says the latest wheat harvest shortages prove Indians are secretly raiding supply wagons. Martha sighed. 6 months of relative peace hadn't silenced all opposition. Crawford and his dwindling supporters still blamed every misfortune on Comanche's presence, but their influence had waned as the benefits of cooperation became tangible. The wheat failed because of drought, as everyone knows, she replied. Though I suspect Quanah's scouts will offer buffalo trade again. Their hunters found healthy herds near Palo Duro Canyon. Such trading arrangements, Comanche territory buffalo for settler grain reserves, exemplified how former enemies discovered mutual benefit. Warriors who once raided supply wagons now protected trade routes, recognized as better providers for their bands through cooperation than conflict. A knock interrupted their morning discussion. Martha opened to find Sarah Chen, the Chinese seamstress, from Fort Lancaster, carrying a bundle of fabric. Sarah had become one of Martha's closest allies, perhaps because, as another outsider, she understood what it meant to bridge cultures. "Morning, Mrs. Reynolds." Sarah bowed slightly. "Brought the ceremonial shirts you ordered, used eagle symbols like Tawakana described." The garments were magnificent, cotton shirts decorated with intricate beadwork, featuring soaring eagles, symbols of the higher perspective both cultures increasingly aspired to achieve. Such items were gifted during successful negotiations, marking the transformation from enemies to allies. "They're beautiful," Martha admired the craftsmanship. "Though Quanah insists you charge a fair price, not a friendship discount." Sarah smiled. "He's a good man, pays better than many settlers, respects the work." The seamstress had gained deep insight into Comanche culture during frequent visits. She'd even learned traditional women's beadwork techniques, creating unique fusion styles that appealed to younger warriors, embracing change without abandoning heritage. After Sarah departed, Martha spent the morning preparing for tomorrow's council. These sessions had evolved from tense confrontations to productive problem-solving. Recent discussions focused on water rights disputes, settlers digging wells near traditional Comanche springs, creating conflicts that once would have escalated to violence. The solution developed through Martha's mediation involved shared access schedules and proper spring maintenance. Comanche women taught settler wives how to prevent contamination during drought. In exchange, settlers shared windmill technology to reach deeper water tables. Such practical cooperation built trust more effectively than any formal treaty. That afternoon, Mary Mitchell visited with news that her family had moved back to the territory. The girl had grown confident despite her ordeal. Her maturity forged through suffering, transformed into wisdom. "Father says he can finally sleep through the night without his rifle," Mary confided. "Knowing Comanche scouts patrol nearby actually makes him feel safer now." The irony wasn't lost on Martha. Former terrors had become protectors, watching for threats from outside both Comanche and settler communities. Apache raids from Mexico, bandits crossing from Louisiana. Such external dangers reinforced alliance necessity. "Will you attend tomorrow's council?" Martha asked. Mary hesitated. "I want to thank Tawakana properly. Last time everything happened so fast." The young Comanche had indeed become a local hero to both peoples. His courage at Sacred Canyon, refusing to abandon either Comanche values or newfound white friendships, inspired other youth toward reconciliation rather than cycles of revenge. As the sun climbed higher, Martha rode to Yellow Ridge, where Quanah's delegation would camp overnight. The meeting place had become sacred neutral ground, decorated with petroglyphs, both ancient and new. Recent additions included images of clasped hands, shared pipes, even rough sketches of the Sacred Canyon battle, where alliance proved stronger than ancestral hatred. At the ridge, she discovered Tawakana had already arrived, organizing younger warriors in preparation for tomorrow. His shoulder had healed completely, leaving only a faint scar that he wore proudly as a badge of transformation. "Brother comes today," Tawakana announced excitedly. "Buffalo Runner leads 20 warriors from the northern plains, first time they negotiate with whites." This expansion represented Martha's greatest hope and deepest concern. Would new Comanche bands embrace compromise or reject it as corruption of traditional ways? Success at her cabin could either inspire broader peace or create backlash from purists. "Your father comes?" she asked. Later, he tries to convince Buffalo Runner that whites have honor too. Tawakana's English had improved through monthly visits, though he maintained a distinctive cadence that reminded Martha daily of linguistic bridges still being built. As afternoon faded, dust clouds signaled approaching riders. Buffalo Runners. Band approached in traditional formation, weapons visible but not threatening. The war chief himself rode at center, a massive figure whose presence commanded respect before words were spoken. Martha waited with a customary greeting gift, fresh-baked. Bread and honey, symbols of harvest abundance possible through peace. Buffalo Runner dismounted, studying her with penetrating assessment. This, the white woman who saved Quanah's son. His English was limited, but sufficient. "I helped heal one boy," Martha replied carefully. "Now we try to heal 2 peoples." The chief's stern face gradually softened. In Comanche culture, one who preserved the future generation deserved the deepest respect. He accepted bread reverently, breaking peace to share among his warriors, ritual acknowledging shared substance. Evening brought Quanah's arrival, transforming anticipation into celebration. The chief's reunion displayed affection between allies, separated by vast territories but united by reformist vision. Buffalo Runner deferred to Quanah's experience with whites, listening intently as his younger counterpart described successful negotiations. Martha observed how Comanche leadership adapted to changing times. Quanah had developed statesman skills, alongside warrior abilities, speaking multiple languages, understanding legal concepts, presenting demands in terms cavalry officers respected. His intelligence, previously focused on warfare, now served diplomacy with equal brilliance. That night, 3 peoples feasted together. Cavalry representatives joined Comanche delegations around fires where buffalo meat supplemented settler contributions. Stories were shared, legends that once stirred hatred now fostering understanding of parallel experiences. "My grandfather fought your grandfather at adobe walls," one veteran trooper told assembled warriors. "My uncle died there," a Comanche elder responded slowly. "Perhaps they know each other now in the spirit world." Such acknowledgments wouldn't have been possible months ago. Pain remained, but without poisonous need for vengeance. Shared losses became bridges rather than chasms. Dawn brought the sacred council itself. Martha's cabin room overflowed with leaders representing an increasingly stable alliance. Buffalo Runner observed proceedings with growing approval as complex disputes were resolved through patient discussion rather than violent assertion. The breakthrough came when the water rights conflict threatened council breakdown. Settlers demanded exclusive control over the newly discovered spring. Comanche claimed traditional access, reaching back generations. Without Martha's innovation, deadlock might have shattered progress. What if, she proposed, the spring becomes a shared sanctuary? A place where both peoples must come together, where cooperation is enforced by mutual need. The concept aligned with both traditions, Comanche recognition of sacred places requiring protection, settler appreciation for defended water sources. After heated debate, compromise emerged, shared morning and evening access with different groups maintaining spring during alternating seasons. More importantly, the spring would require joint protection against contamination or attack. Former enemies would literally guard each other's water of life. Symbolism couldn't have been stronger. Buffalo Runner spoke final acceptance through careful translation. Waters that flow under earth care nothing for skin color. Why should those who drink above? His words would echo through frontier legends, marking moment when even traditionalist warriors glimpsed wisdom in adaptation. Celebrations followed successful resolution. Martha noticed how freely laughter flowed between groups, once divided by absolutes. Cavalry soldiers learned Comanche gambling games while teaching card tricks. Warriors showed cavalry proper horseback archery techniques while studying cavalry drilling patterns. Tawakana organized foot races between Comanche and settler youth, prizes donated by both communities. Mary Mitchell served as judge, her experiences bridging age gaps between potential future leaders of reconciliation. During the afternoon's quiet hours, Martha found herself alone with Quanah, overlooking assembled celebrants. The war chief had aged visibly during months of intense negotiation, though authority radiated more powerfully than ever. "You carry a heavy burden," Martha observed. Quanah nodded thoughtfully. "Lead warriors to war, lead warriors to peace. Both need strength, but peace is harder to maintain, because war's clarity doesn't exist in peace," Martha suggested. "War has enemy to fight. Peace has old thoughts to fight." He gestured toward the younger generation mingling freely. "They show path, but the path needs older feet to make it strong." His philosophic turn surprised her less now than during early encounters. Martha had learned Comanche chiefs combined warrior prowess with deep spiritual reflection. Their medicine traditions required balance between action and contemplation, violence and healing. "Brennan received orders," she mentioned carefully. "Washington considers making your alliance model for other territories." Quanah's expression mixed pride with concern. "We succeed because we know each other now, face to face, name to name. Treaties far away might only see shadows." His worry proved prescient. Within weeks, government officials arrived to study the Reynolds model of frontier reconciliation. Their reports focused on structures, regular councils, signal systems, trading protocols, while missing crucial elements: individual courage, personal relationships, willingness to risk everything for transformed possibility. Martha watched. Bureaucrats reduce living peace to administrative procedures, yet she recognized the necessity of expansion. Sacred Canyon's lesson needed sharing, even if filtered through imperfect understanding. As summer progressed, Martha's cabin hosted increasing diversity. Cherokee representatives sought guidance on boundary negotiations. Kiowa chiefs explored Comanche success. Military theorists analyzed unprecedented cooperation between hereditary enemies. Her personal legacy expanded beyond diplomacy. Martha's journal, detailing alliance's evolution from wounded boy to international recognition, was published reluctantly after persistent requests. Bridge Between Peoples became required reading at cavalry training academies and Indian agencies alike. But fame brought unwanted consequences. Zealots on both sides criticized her as a traitor to racial purity. She faced death threats from settlers convinced she'd sold out white civilization, from Comanche traditionalists who saw her as a corruption of noble resistance. Protection arrived from unexpected sources. Young warriors who considered her adopted. Medicine women took turns guarding her property. Cavalry veterans who remembered Sacred Canyon organized informal patrols. Former enemies united again, this time in protecting their common bridge. The threats peaked during harvest time when tensions naturally escalated. Drought had stressed both communities, making scarcity test everyone's commitment to peace. Crawford seized the opportunity to demand Comanche land for settlement expansion, claiming the alliance had failed to address real problems. Martha's response earned permanent place in frontier law. During Harvest Festival attended by both peoples, she addressed assembled crowd. 6 months ago I sheltered a wounded boy, not knowing he carried peace between worlds in his heartbeat. Today, threatened with violence for building bridges, I ask, which requires more courage, shooting enemies or feeding them, fearing differences or learning from them? She lifted Quanah's son's necklace, now decorated with new tokens celebrating surviving challenges. This bear claw reminds us, predator became protector when circumstances changed. We cannot predict what tomorrow requires, only prepare hearts for impossible transformations. Her words resonated across cultural divides. Even some of Crawford's supporters drifted away, attracted by practical realities of cooperation's benefits over ideological purity. Winter brought new tests as survival demanded maximum efficiency. Joint hunting expeditions proved necessity rather than choice. Comanche tracking expertise combined with settler winter provisions saved both communities from worse deprivations. Christmas Day found Martha hosting an unprecedented feast. Catholic cavalry celebrated the birth of Peace Prince while honoring Comanche winter solstice traditions. Religious fusion that might have sparked outrage instead created a profound experience of shared sacred time. Father Michael O'Connor, visiting priest from San Antonio, offered communion to soldiers while respecting Comanche spiritual practices. His sermon spoke of star that guides, marking way through darkness, metaphor both faiths could embrace. Bethlehem star, morning star, evening star, different names for lights leading us toward better possibilities, he preached. Perhaps different peoples are like different stars, each adding brightness to the sky that covers us all. As the year's turning approached, Martha compiled achievements into a report for territorial governor. Statistics impressed: 0 violent conflicts between alliance members, successful resolution of 14 major disputes, establishment of 12 shared enterprises ranging from trading posts to medical stations. But numbers failed capturing transformation's essence. How could statistics measure Herbert Mitchell's newfound ability to smile when Comanche riders appeared? Tawakana's confidence leading peer mediation between settler and Indian youth? The unnamed warrior who'd surrendered at Sacred Canyon, now teaching buffalo hunting techniques to settlers struggling with game scarcity? New Year's Eve brought an unexpected gathering. Comanche tradition and settler custom merged into a celebration that would become an annual event. Both peoples marked time's passage by recounting history leading to present alliance, honoring those who died with understanding rather than bitterness. Quanah announced Buffalo Runner's full acceptance of the peace model, pledging Northern Plains Comanche bands would seek similar arrangements with their bordering settlers. Seeds planted at Sacred Canyon began spreading to wider geography. Does knowledge that peace expands beyond our experiment change its meaning? Martha asked Quanah during a private moment. Makes it more sacred, he replied without hesitation. We prove possible not just for us, but for all who come to borders between worlds. As midnight approached, both peoples gathered around a great fire built collaboratively. Tawakana stood ready with English and Comanche versions of proclamation they'd composed together. We declare this ground, place where mercy became an alliance, where enemies became brothers in protection, where single act of healing began. A transformation larger than any one life. We declare this ground sacred to memory and hope. May future generations find here courage to bridge every divide that threatens shared tomorrow. The words echoed across plains where countless conflicts had once raged. Now those same winds carried the promise that a different future was possible, where strength was measured by bridges built rather than enemies defeated. Martha felt profound satisfaction mixed with humbling awareness. Her simple choice to save one wounded boy had rippled into movement reshaping frontier relationships. Yet she also knew personal credit mattered less than principle demonstrated. When humans choose humanity over fear, individuals can alter destinies. A flow. As celebration continued into the new year, she touched necklace symbols marking her journey, original bear claw for courage, eagle feather for high perspective, new additions representing each successfully mediated conflict. Together, they told a story not just of personal transformation, but of how two peoples learned to transform hatred into hope. The fire crackled, sending sparks skyward like prayers for blessing on the path ahead. Around its glow, former enemies shared songs, stories, and silences, thick with growing trust. Dawn would bring continued challenges. Not all wounds could be healed, not all hatreds extinguished. Some would always choose separation over connection, conflict over cooperation. But the Sacred Canyon Alliance had proved a possibility stronger than most dared to imagine. Where Martha Reynolds once stood alone on Texas plains, a community now flourished. Not Comanche, not American, but something new. A borderland where different worlds touched carefully, learning that strength could flow from recognition rather than rejection of others' humanity. The eagle necklace warmed against her skin, reminder that bridges, once built with courage and maintained with wisdom, could span chasms that had seemed eternal. The story would continue long after those who lived it passed into legend, but on this first anniversary of the Alliance's unlikely birth, hope outshone uncertainty, and tomorrow held more promise than threat. Martha smiled at gathering where she belonged to, neither fully, yet was essential to both. This was the legacy worth leaving, proof that when mercy leads where wisdom follows, impossible distances between peoples become bridges to cross together. The prairie wind shifted, carrying scent of sage and cedar, buffalo and wood smoke, mingled. Aromas of cultures learning they could share one land without destroying each other. At that moment, Martha understood completely. She hadn't saved just one boy. She'd helped save an entire frontier from endless war's devastation, and the best part remained. The story had only begun. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.